Hey everybody! Deep Rock Galactic is not a story-focused game. That's not a criticism. The developers want to focus on gameplay, and they do a great job of that. I just can't help but notice that there's a lot of potential for storytelling. Intentional or not, there's a lot of interesting ideas. I know that not everybody cares about world building or lore, but I hope I can give you a glimpse into why I'm so passionate about Deep Rock's foundation for storytelling. And if you enjoy hearing me ramble about theories with less than steady foundations, go ahead and subscribe and leave a comment. I'd like to see what theories you guys can come up with as well. That aside, let's dive into some theories about the history of the dwarves. Now, when I say history of the dwarves, I don't mean the story behind the Deep Rock Galactic Company or how the player characters started working there. I'm talking about the history of the dwarves as a species. Now, obviously we can't really catalog the entire story from start to finish, but I think we can get a general understanding. Before we dive into the past, let's take a look at the present. The dwarves we play as are very clearly experienced fighters. They know how to handle their equipment and their weaponry. That's not a shocking revelation, but it does raise a question. Where did they learn these skills? Maybe Deep Rock Galactic trains them, but the tutorial implied you have some previous experience since Mission Control isn't explaining to you how your guns work or anything like that. If the dwarves have combat experience, where did they get it? The cosmetics are the go-to for questions like this. Cosmetics tend to be silly, with the flavor text being used for jokes or witty references. But looking closely, we can extract a bit of story. Looking at the beret, its flavor text says, "In honor of your service." It may seem like something pretty mundane, but I think it's kind of strange. Berets are usually given out as part of a military uniform. Why is Deep Rock Galactic handing these out? Sure, it's a deadly job, but it's an odd choice nonetheless. Unless, of course, our dwarves were in the military at some point. Looking at the other items in the game, it's clear that the dwarves have a storied history of combat and warfare. The Great Pappy's Doughboy states that it's been in the family for generations. We don't know how long dwarves live in the DRG universe, but this implies that the dwarves have been fighting for at least 100 years. This might actually explain in-universe why dwarves have a disdain for elves, humans, and gnomes. I know it's a bit of a fantasy trope for dwarves to be xenophobic, but centuries of warfare might also be a good explanation. There are many cosmetic items that reference some kind of war, but I think one of the most interesting is the Reclamator helmet. The first part of its flavor text is just a quote from Jaws. Nothing too special, most cosmetics have lots of quotes or references. What I find interesting is the last line. The Reclamator helmet is a simple design that commands instant respect. That's interesting. What about this helmet is so respectable? Well, to answer that question, we should start by asking a different one. What does Reclamator mean? I couldn't find many definitions, but I did find this on Wiktionary. A person, company, or device which reclaims something, especially useful soil, or useful elements in soil, from unusable soil. Now, dwarves love dirt, but I'm certain that someone who sifts through soil would not be such a revered figure. I think we should ignore the last part of this definition and focus on the first half. A person, company, or device which reclaims something. Perhaps these helmets were worn by fierce soldiers that fought to reclaim a lost city or planet. This brings up many interesting implications. The fact that something needed to be reclaimed in the first place implies that the dwarves didn't always win the wars they fought in. Some further evidence comes from Gunner's Mark V armor. Its flavor text specifies that it bears several similarities to Old World tortoises. Old World tortoises? That's an odd word choice. The name implies that the dwarves had to move to a new world. Perhaps the dwarves lost their home planet and the Reclamators fought to win it back. This theory also opens up another interesting rabbit hole. You may have noticed that all the references to warfare are given in past tense. Why did the dwarves stop fighting? I think it's pretty likely that the dwarves we play as are not in the military anymore, and I doubt they were right before employment. After all, why would you leave a position in the military to go work for Deep Rock Galactic? I think that the playable dwarves were likely mercenaries right before being hired. But why did they leave the military? Perhaps the losses the dwarves have suffered are taking their toll. The Dwarven Empire seems like it might be shrinking. Corporations seem to hold most of the power now. Maybe these very corporations are steering the dwarves away from warfare as a way of maintaining their species, and likely making a ton of cash on top of it. This idea has some evidence in the corporate marine helm, which is apparently grim and infamous along the Outer Rim. You may notice that this is written in present tense. Perhaps this helmet is worn by dwarves working for a company of mercenaries, hunting down threats somewhere in the Outer Rim. The desire for combat could also be why dwarves even take these dangerous jobs in the first place. With no real military left, this is the only way to satisfy their desire for battle. It would also help explain why the dwarves resent management so much, blaming them for turning away from glorious warfare that their ancestors participated in. Overall, it paints a rather sad picture of the dwarven race. A dwindling population, brought to its decline by their lust for battle, now ruled by corporate overlords who use this desire for their own gain. Their legacy as brutal warriors fading away with the passing of time, they cling to relics of the past as a desperate way to remember what they once were. Now, they seek fights wherever they can find them. Perhaps that way they can relive the glory days of old. Or maybe all of this is wrong. I mean, it's based on like 5 cosmetic descriptions. What do you want from me? Well, what do you guys think? Am I tapping into some truth, or am I just speaking nonsense? Regardless of which is the most accurate, I hope you guys saw why I think the Deep Rock Galactic story has a lot of potential. As always, leave a comment down below to let me know what you thought. As always, leave a comment down below to let me know what you think. Share your theories, I might feature them in a future video. I've got a couple more theories stored in my back pocket just in case I want to talk about this topic again. So if you're excited for that, leave a thumbs up on this video, and make sure you go ahead and press subscribe. As an added bonus, you'll be invited to my birthday party. Until then, see you later.